As Kim mentioned, my name is Jeff Marsh, and I'm going to be talking a little bit around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, for today, I've only got 20 minutes, but really a couple of things I want to talk about is everybody's going to ask me, like, well, why? Why are you here? Well, I guess one of the things I always talk about is I have been in the construction industry, and I'm going to go low. And I've been in the industry for 20 years. So I saw a lot of friends today that I haven't seen in a long time due to travel restrictions. But the thing is, I'm always intrigued when people ask, hey, what do you do? And I say, hey, I'm in construction. They're like, really? Tell me about it. And so I always want to tell them about it. And I think for me, and I think most of y'all that have been in this industry, we're trying to get more talent into it, right? That's always been a challenge in the industry. So I'm always trying to tell them, pull them in. And I can attest, I'm trying to do my part. I have 5 kids. I've got 2 in the industry. I've got a daughter and a son that have been trying to do it. But if we look at how can we pull in more talent into the industry, let's look at some current things right now. Where are we today? So again, I'm going to pull up some stats and so forth, and hopefully none of the stats I'm pulling up are surprising to you. This is a very male-dominated and also Caucasian or white industry. Again, hopefully none of these stats are new to you, but again, I'm trying to bring these to light because I think we kind of shove them under the carpet. The other one is, I just pulled this one up, and this was from the US EEOC, and they just recently issued a report back in May. And a lot of and again, I put up the bullet points on there, but I'm going to kind of go through those on here. Is it kind of reiterates what I said earlier is, hey, we would say women and people of color are grossly underrepresented within this. The other thing that's going to say from that standpoint is harassment is very prevalent in the industry. The other things, I guess, as I go through and talk about this, kind of reading about it is when we think about harassment, we don't really hear about it a lot. But again, it kind of pointed some things that kind of brought me to light. And I was like, wow, this is still happening. The racial harassment. One of the examples I said, nooses are actually showing up still on job sites today. I was like, wow, this is 2023. So again, a lot of those things that happen from that standpoint. And the other thing that if you think about this is, I think in construction, we always say safety, 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 right? Well, harassment is a form of a safety in that it can happen. So what are we doing on that? So it's something else. And again, I'm not a safety expert. Some of the folks I've talked to said, yeah, we've actually been addressing it. We've been talking about it. But again, I think the key is how do we elevate the discussion here? And the other thing I think at the end of the day I want to talk about on this is the people that are subject to that harassment. One of the things that we find on here is that they're alone. They really don't have a way to go out and say, hey, something happened. And if they do, what's going to happen? They're going to get retaliated against. They get fired. I read article after article after article of people doing this and happening. So again, my call to action is just, hey, be aware of this. It's still happening today. What can you do to step up and kind of make changes? So, I guess, when looking at this, and I've got a couple of other things on this, hey, if construction industry intends to grow, I think we all want it to grow. We want it to prosper. What do we need to do? We need to expand the group of people that are working in our industry. Another way to kind of think about this as well is, when we talk to organizations or businesses, how are we going to change behaviors out there? So if you look at companies today, we hear about the DEI or diversity and inclusion. It's all in the news and so forth. So I kind of broke it up into 3 main areas. What are the things or drivers from that standpoint? So the first one around it is market imperatives, in that a lot of organizations see it as, hey, we can look at it as a responsibility and we want to go and grow our business. So by attacking this and going after it, we can grow into different areas. The other one is if you look at internal initiatives that companies have, they see it as a social responsibility. Hey, we've got to go do something as an organization and grow it. So I'm part of Oracle. We're a very large company. We have our initiatives in place, but I'm seeing a lot of the smaller organizations. I typically work with smaller construction firms, and that's one of the things I ask them. Say, hey, what are y'all doing around this? Well, we really haven't really thought about it from that standpoint. We're doing some stuff in different regional areas, but not everywhere. The other question, and of course, I'm in construction, we have to talk about litigation a little bit. So if you look at the federal, state, and local levels, one of the things they're saying, and I'm hearing this over and over, especially in just the reading and talking, is ignorance is not going to be tolerated. You've got to be able to take accountability and do something about this. So you have to think about it from a litigation. How is your company going to be seen in the market? What are you doing about this? So kind of stepping back and I've said a lot of things so far, but I think the other thing to think about is if we look at DEI maturity as an organization, where is your company? Where is your organization today? And I did this, there was research, Ella Washington had put this out last month in the Harvard Business Review. And if you talk about the different stages of maturity, you can go in and kind of see them. So you have kind of the beginning of the companies they're going in from that standpoint. The other one is, apologies, I'm trying to look up over here. Yep, it's compliant. So how is an organization going to be compliant? We're seeing this is really kind of the main area where clients are coming out in that because they're being forced by legal ramifications, i.e. the EEOC is coming to them and talking about it. The other one is tactical. Hey, now we're starting to grow. We've got an initiative in place. Really just seeing this, though, at a regional level within those organizations. And then finally on there, kind of the last one is integrated. We're seeing this all across our organization. It's very much of a kind of a thing that we do every day. And then sustainable. How do we make our company continue to do this and move on to it? So again, one of the things, again, the calling on this, it's kind of a call to action is to you is, what is your organization in this? What are you doing? How can you improve your organization's maturity in this? What are you doing around that standpoint? So one of the other things on here, again, just the final things, just looking at stats. I'm more of an engineer, statistician at heart. Again, we can see that companies are going through this. Of course, this was a survey, so everybody's a little bit different on that. But again, you can kind of see where all those organizations are. So one of the other things is kind of transitioning into today is, how I hear this a lot. How can we help the industry out there in capturing this information? So Ella, one of the things that she's put into here, she said, what systems and structures do we have in place as an organization? So as we mature as a company, we need to do what? Build programming. Sorry, I'm going to go up here and read it. That removes the burden of continuing the drumbeat for DEI from the shoulders of people. What does that mean? Well, when people are out doing things, they have to do things physically, they have to do things manually. So how can we make it easier for people to be able to capture this information? So naturally, I work for a software organization, software solution company. So of course I put my hat on and said, hey, how can I make the industry better? How can I make us more efficient? If I look at construction industry, everybody hears probably the things, we waste 10% doing X, Y, and Z things. So what can we do to make it easier from that standpoint? So one of the things that I think about is you think about DEI and diversity and tracking, what is it always tied to? It's always tied to the payment on your projects, right? So if you look at the payment process that happens on projects, typically your clients you're going to talk to say, yeah, we can tell you what was contracted, but if you go then and ask them at a later time, hey, what was actually paid out? How do you address all your different change orders and so forth? That's why I have that little fuzzy math in there, a question mark. A lot of companies or construction projects I go to, they kind of, yeah, we think it is. I go, how accurate is it? I don't know. That was 3 months ago, Jeff, 4 months ago. So again, how can we help you with that information? And why is it so difficult to do this? So I used to work for a general contractor. I don't know if any of y'all lived through the fun of doing the payment application process on a monthly basis, but I did that for a number of years from that standpoint. So if you look at the process, you're going to have multiple subcontractors, right? You've put out a contract for them, so you're going to have 15, 20, 30. If you have very large projects, you're probably going to have up to 40 or 50 subcontractors on a project. Then if you're collecting DEI information, you've got to account for all those sub-tiers, the suppliers, and so forth. So how are they collecting all that information? The other thing to think about is not only are we collecting DEI information, we're collecting invoices. So the AIA 702, 703, it's what I typically encountered, sworn statements, unconditional lien waivers, all those type of things from that standpoint we're having to collect. And then if you look at this process, you've got 100, 40, 50, 100 organizations that are collecting and submitting their information. How is it done? I'm here to tell you, it's still highly manual. Yeah, we use emails and Dropbox, but that's 100 plus spreadsheets that somebody's having to go through and cipher and pull that information out. And then they're putting that information in. And here's the other thing to think about from that standpoint. Remember I said we do this every month? So just when you get done, guess what? You're going to go and start over and do this all again. I guess a good example that I talked to is one of my colleagues. Her daughter is actually interning at a general contractor this summer. And she was talking to her and she goes, Mom, I'm doing payment apps and I'm also on our project, we're having to collect DEI information. Oh my gosh, is this the way everybody does it? She goes, what do you mean? She goes, I'm collecting hundreds of spreadsheets. I'm putting this information, we're submitting and having a report on it. So it's a very difficult process and be able to pull that together. So again, I think the other thing to think about is not just the process, but you think about, you have somebody in college and she's working for a contractor. She's like, I don't know if I really want to stay in this business. So again, that's the impression that we don't want to give to people in that industry. So I am going to talk a little bit about a solution because I do believe in it from that standpoint. But one of the solutions that I've been working with for a number of years is Oracle Textura. So Textura, what we do is we facilitate the payment process. And so what should this process look like? Well, basically is all your vendors, your subcontractors and suppliers go into one system. It's a web-based solution, of course. And they're going to be going in on a monthly basis and filling in their draw information. So what does that look like? Well, basically, we make it a three-step process for these vendors that they repeat every month. First thing is they're going to enter in their invoice information, i.e. they're going to fill out their pay application or their schedule of values. They're going to fill that in an Excel-like interface. At the same time, we're also have the option to turn on the DEI information so they can capture sub-tiers, put in their minority status information, and be able to list this information. The other thing that we do to make it efficient is we also, as soon as those vendors enter in the information, we generate all the documents that they need to sign. So an AIAG 702, the sworn statements, all that information is generated, and then they sign them digitally through DocuSign. So everything is legal. You've got a PDF with the legal stamps and all that information. The final thing we do, and this is where I kind of get people looking at me funny, is the subs and the vendors actually sign their unconditional lien waivers at the same time. Now people go, wait a minute, they haven't been paid yet. Well, that's okay. What we do in Textura is we actually facilitate the payment through our solution. And so we strip out that signature, we put that signature in a safety box electronically, and then we release that signature when the vendors have been paid through Textura. So again, we facilitate. So the days of chasing down lien waivers, and if y'all ever done that, you know the horrors and the fun of doing that, that's some of that. But at the end of the day, again, we're talking about efficiencies. Again, we're repeating this every month. Now we've collected all this information, and not only can I report on my, my payment information, but now I've collected my DEI information. So now I know what I've contracted, and I can actually see in real time what I've actually paid out. I can see my percentages where I am within the tool. So again, Textura, we're a construction management company. We've been in business since 2004. And that's really all we do is we focus on the construction group. We don't go into other little facets. That's all we do from that standpoint. So we know the business very well from that. If you look at it, I've already talked about the step one, the invoicing. We also facilitate the approval process. So the GC and the owners are going to be looking through those monthly pay applications and they need to approve them. So again, we have a digital interface to be able to do that, making things efficient. We also are checking compliance. Again, double checking, hey, we're not going to pay somebody if they're out of compliance. Something as simple as an insurance form, something as certified payroll. Again, those are some of the things that we do. And then I also talked about the payment. But we have clients that are using this, but then they've approached us and said, hey, how can we add the DEI. So we basically looked at this and just added the DEI component on top of the current process. Again, are all our customers using this? No, they don't have requirements yet. But I would say in the past 6, 18 months, the clients I've talked to that are required to put in DEI information, it's been a hockey stick. And it's not just public sector, it's not just government. We're finding a lot of owners out there are requiring that you report on this information. So again, it's becoming an issue. Again, how do we make the things more efficient from that standpoint? Just a little things about Textura. Again, some big numbers that we show out there. Again, as I mentioned, we've been in business since 2004. We've facilitated over $1 trillion in project values on our system. Kind of the number that I still wake up at night, kind of laugh, but go, oh my goodness. We do almost a little over $11.5 billion in payments through our system. I would say 5 years ago, we did about $4 billion. So we're growing, people are hearing things. And again, the key with this is I think we're very passionate about construction. We're trying to make it more efficient. The other thing that Textura does, which I haven't mentioned, is we're trying to make payment happen faster. How many of y'all have heard that we pay very slowly in construction? Anybody ever heard that term? So why is that? Well, I showed you our process. It's very old. It's very paper intensive. We're sending things over. So how can we make payments happen faster? This is one of the things to do. Again, efficiencies and driving that. Just got a few minutes. I'm not going to go through a lot of these again. If any of y'all have more questions, I welcome you to come to the back. I can show you more and discuss more some of the things. But again, the idea with Textura is giving you that real-time information. So it's an interactive dashboard. I can pull up information, see what has been paid and contracted, and then simply click on it and see what a percentage is. The other thing that I saw in one of the articles I read is, hey, we got lost track of the goals about halfway through the project. We contracted it. We met our 20%. We forgot about all the change orders we did. And their goal went, vroom. So instead of being at 20%, they were at like 2. That's how bad the change order. Well, so with Textura, we give you the ability to see your goals and up to date and be able to track that information and see, hey, how are we progressing on our goals? Speaking of goals, you can set them up in all different ways. You can set them up across your entire project at a 20%. You can also pick and choose which of those contracts are going to be affected by that status. Again, different classifications. Of course, I'm in Chicago, so I put in City of Chicago. You can create different classifications on all your different projects. So one thing I've found is every project is different. So you would think, oh, we're going to use the same thing over and over. Nope. Talk to every owner out here, and they're like, well, we require this and this and this. So again, we try to make things a little bit different or make it easier for you to do it. Again, all the information, we have one place to go to, pull that information up. So this gives you a view of it. And of course, we've got to be able to get the information out. That's one of the things that we're looking at right now is not only just be able to export this information into data, but actually have integrations to different BEI or DEI solutions. So when we do this information, we can actually push that information to another solution without having to push and manually enter that data. So just some other of the reports, analysis, and so forth from that. One of the last things, again, in closing, again, the work of DEI is never done. I think what I'm trying to do is to, without continued vigilance, we've got to be able to do this. So if you're uncomfortable with it, you can tell I'm very uncomfortable in this, but again, I'm out here trying to raise awareness of this. So I think it's very important in our industry. The other thing is, here's a vision to think about. Hope for a future where diversity and inclusion programs and leaders do not exist at all because they're simply no longer needed. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you letting me come up.